Nonprofit organizations receive the vast majority of grant dollars available across the globe, but it's not as simple as filling in a form and receiving a check. This video shows you who gives grants to nonprofits and why. You need to understand that information to save time and only apply for those grants that are most likely to support your organization. I will also conduct a real online search and find real grants. You'll learn how to do this yourself. One important note, grants for nonprofits can be quite different than grants for individuals or grants for small business. Videos for those situations are linked below. Nonprofits are a unique entity organized for a purpose other than generating profit. They can also go by different names across the globe, including NGOs, which means non-governmental organizations, or simply charities. There are three main categories of grant funders, also known as grant makers. Pro tip, pay attention to their different motivations for awarding grants. Private foundations are often started by an individual or a couple who have a personal motivation to see a specific community need met. Their foundations can range in size from those that award a few $1,000s each year to local charities to multi-billion-dollar funders that award grants worldwide. Corporations also offer grants. Their motivation is to support particular corporate goals. For example, banks often support financial literacy programs which help people learn how to manage money, but also help to encourage a new generation of bank customers. Public grant makers can be local, state, or federal government agencies. In each case, they utilize tax dollars for grants. Their motivation is to support their political priorities. I happen to have a video dedicated to government grants, linked above and in the description below. Now that we know who the grant makers are, we need to ask, what will their grant dollars pay for or not? Pro tip, overall, grant makers award grant dollars to organizations that can move the needle on a community need and sustain that movement. Grant makers most often choose to support programs and services because that is where they see the biggest return for their grant dollars. There are also grants for capital projects like a new building or a renovation, but they are specific, targeted, and very limited. A common non-starter for grant makers is basic operating costs, such as utilities, staff, or building maintenance. So we know who gives grant dollars to nonprofits and what those dollars will pay for. Next question, how do I find grant opportunities for my organization? You will need to conduct some online research, and your search parameters will need to include three important components. I'm going to run a real online grant search right now with real search results as an example. First, I use the phrase, in quotation marks, grant for nonprofit organizations, but the number of results is too broad. You'll never get to the end of that search result list. So you need to narrow that down to your specific location because grants are tied very closely to geography. For example, grants for nonprofit organizations plus Uganda. Here's a list of results, and I've linked several of them below. Third, your search parameters need to name the program type, because the list I just generated includes a lot of grants that won't work and will take too much time to sift through. For example, grants for nonprofit organizations plus Uganda plus food distribution. You can see that the list got shorter and more precise. Links to these opportunities also listed below. We just found a lot of grant opportunities through a few clicks in a free search engine. If you want a deeper dive into lists of grant opportunities, linked below are several free and paid grant list services that span the globe. These are not promotions or sponsorships of Grant Chatter, though maybe someday they could be. Here's the last crucial question you need to answer in your grant search. When is the grant proposal due? The vast majority of grants operate on an inflexible schedule. That's because the grant funder has specific dates to post grant opportunities, to receive and review proposals, and to award grant dollars. Then they start the process all over again for the next round. Simply put, a late grant proposal is an unfunded grant proposal. We've covered a lot of ground in a very short time. We've learned who gives grants to nonprofit organizations and why. We've looked at what these grants will pay for or not, and we saw how to find the right grant opportunity for your needs in your location. One last pro tip. Once you've selected a grant to apply for, how do you fill it out? I have that covered for you in an entire playlist, How to Write a Grant, linked above and in the description below. I'm Tiffany, and thank you for watching Grant Chatter. See you in the next video.